Welcome to Unbreakable Truth. In today's video, we are venturing into a space that exists in nearly every town and city across the globe. A place of fluorescent lights and endless aisles, a monument to modern convenience that, by day, feels mundane, even boring. But as the sun sets and the crowds thin, a subtle shift occurs. The atmosphere changes. The familiar becomes foreign, and the well-lit corridors can suddenly feel like the most isolating canyons imaginable. We are talking about the late-night trip to the superstore. An errand that should be simple, routine. But for the individuals in the stories we're about to hear, these routine trips became exercises in pure terror. These are not tales of supernatural monsters or spectral phantoms. The horror we will explore today is profoundly, chillingly human. It's the horror of a lingering gaze, the primal fear of being hunted, the gut-wrenching violation of personal space, and the cold realization that you are not as safe as you thought you were. We will delve deep into three distinct encounters, each one a testament to the power of intuition, that ancient, internal alarm system that we too often ignore. We will unpack the psychology of fear, the tactics of predators, and the moments of sheer, desperate courage that can mean the difference between a close call and a tragedy. We will examine how the most terrifying stories are not those whispered in graveyards, but those that unfold under the sterile, unforgiving light of a place you've visited 100 times before. So, make yourself comfortable, but not too comfortable. Dim the lights, and prepare to listen closely. Because the stories we are about to share, they serve as a stark reminder that sometimes, the most unbreakable truth is the one your gut is screaming at you, long before your mind has caught up. Story 1, The Garbage Bag Run. Our first story begins not long ago, in the humid embrace of an early July evening. The specific date has blurred, as traumatic moments often do, but the feeling remains crystalline. It was a night that smelled of cut grass and distant rain, a typical summer weeknight. For our narrator, a young woman freshly graduated from high school, the world was stretching out before her. 18 years old, standing on the precipice of adulthood, that age where every small taste of independence feels like a monumental victory. Her friend, 19, was over visiting. A simple plan was hatched, a quick run to the local Walmart for garbage bags. A 5-minute errand, tops. It was around 9 p.m., a time that, just months prior, would have been firmly past her mother's curfew. But graduation changes things. That piece of paper is a key, unlocking a new set of permissions. Her mother, perhaps with a hint of reluctance, agreed. Her daughter was an adult now, accompanied by another adult. What could possibly happen on a quick trip to a well-lit, public store? This is the first layer of the psychological landscape we must understand, the illusion of safety. We construct these illusions constantly. It's a busy store. It's still early. There will be people around. These are the rationalizations that allow us to function without paralyzing fear. But they are, as our narrator would soon discover, flimsy constructs. The drive to the store was uneventful, filled with the easy conversation of close friends. They parked, entered the buzzing ecosystem of the superstore, and quickly found their quarry, a box of heavy-duty garbage bags. Mission accomplished. But the night was young, and the lure of aimless browsing, of killing time in a cathedral of consumerism, was strong. They wandered, talking and laughing, the fluorescent lights casting a sterile glow on the shelves of merchandise. It was during this casual wandering that our narrator's subconscious, that ancient sentinel, began to raise its first, quiet alarm. She noticed her friend was acting off. A slight tension in her shoulders. A distracted quality to her laughter. A tendency to glance over her shoulder just a little too often. The narrator, still basking in the glow of her newfound freedom, brushed it off. She attributed it to a bad mood, or perhaps just a passing thought. It's a natural reaction, to dismiss the subtle cues in favor of a more comfortable narrative. We don't want to believe that danger is near, so we explain away the signs. This is a critical mistake, one that evolution has hardwired us to avoid, but that modern comfort has taught us to ignore. They finally made their way to the checkout line, the garbage bags their only purchase. It was here, standing in the queue, that the quiet alarm became a silent scream. Her friend leaned in close, her voice a hushed, tense whisper that cut through the mundane beep of the scanners. "Hey," she said, her breath warm against our narrator's ear. "Do you see that guy?" Our narrator glanced up, her eyes scanning the other customers, the employees, the people passing by. It was a sea of ordinary faces, a cross-section of a sleepy town on a summer night. She saw nothing out of the ordinary. No obvious threat. "No," she whispered back, confused. "What guy?" In that moment, she felt a pang of guilt, a sense of being somehow inadequate for not perceiving the threat her friend had clearly identified. This feeling, too, is a clever trick of the mind, a focus on self-blame that can distract from the growing danger. The transaction was completed. They took their bag and began to walk away, the automatic doors sliding open to reveal the vast, dimly lit expanse of the parking lot. It was only then, as they stepped out of the artificial day and into the natural night, that her friend began to explain. The story tumbled out in a rushed, anxious whisper. "There was a man," she said. "Earlier, near the electronics section. He had said a polite, hello, and she, being raised with manners, had said, hello, back. A harmless, fleeting interaction. Then, she saw him again at the checkout. The same man. Now, it could have been a coincidence. But when your primal instincts are engaged, the brain stops believing in coincidence. It starts connecting dots, painting a picture of intention. They reached their car, the metal of the door handle cool against their palms. As they climbed inside, the familiar sanctuary of the vehicle enveloped them. They clicked their seatbelts, a ritual of safety. And then they saw him. The same man, walking through the parking lot. No big deal, they tried to tell themselves. He's just another customer, heading to his own car. The illusion of safety struggled to reassert itself. He's just going home. It's fine. But then, a decision born of caution. Let's wait until he leaves, our narrator suggested. A simple, prudent tactic. Wait for the potential threat to dissipate before you reveal your own position. They sat in the car, the engine off, the interior lights dark. They were observers now, hidden in plain sight. And that's when the situation escalated from unsettling to terrifying. Because the man wasn't alone. Another car, previously unnoticed, pulled up on their left. And inside were not one, but several figures. Their faces were obscured by shadows, but their intention was communicated not through words, but through something far more primal, their gaze. They were staring, leering through the glass, turning the safety of the car into a fishbowl of fear. The illusion of safety shattered into a million pieces. And in the dead silence of the vehicle, our narrator realized something that would change her forever. This was not a coincidence. This was a hunt. And they were the prey. The human nervous system is a remarkable thing. When faced with a life-threatening situation, it bypasses the conscious, thinking brain and hands control over to the ancient, reptilian core. This is the fight-or-flight response. For our narrator and her friend, flight was the only option. The moment the car full of men parked beside them, the decision was made instantaneously. There was no discussion. Our narrator's friend, her hands gripping the steering wheel with white-knuckled intensity, slammed the gearshift into reverse. The tires squealed in protest as the car lurched backward, then she slammed it into drive and floored the accelerator. The force pressed them back into their seats as they sped out of the parking lot. But the hunters gave chase. The other car, a dark silhouette in the rearview mirror, matched their speed. The quiet town streets, usually so peaceful at night, became a racetrack. The speedometer needle climbed, 50, 60, 70 miles per hour in a 35 zone. The fear was no longer just psychological, it was physical. It was the vibration of the engine, the blur of streetlights, the terrifying knowledge that a single mistake at this speed could be fatal. The thought echoed in their minds, are we going to die from a crash, or from what these men will do if they catch us? It was a horrific choice they never should have had to make. The chase was a chaotic blur of turns and straightaways. At one point, the pursuing vehicle accelerated, pulled alongside them, and the passenger waved, a gesture that was anything but friendly. It was a taunt. A confirmation that this was a game to them. They then sped ahead, pulling into the parking lot of a church. A place of sanctuary, perverted into a waypoint in their pursuit. The car turned around, positioning itself once again behind them, a predator toying with its prey. Our narrator's home was now dangerously close. The instinct to run to the safety of one's home is powerful, but a more sophisticated survival instinct kicked in: do not lead the threat to your doorstep. Do not reveal where you live. They needed a public place, a place with people, with lights, with witnesses. And then, they remembered it, a small, stand-alone convenience store near her house. A place to buy cigarettes, alcohol, and candy. A gas station without the gas pumps. It was their best hope. They swerved into the parking lot, heading not for the front, but for the back of the building, away from the main road. As they scrambled out of the car, their legs shaky with adrenaline, they saw a miracle: a store employee was outside in the back, taking a break. He saw the panic on their faces, the frantic energy radiating from them. They didn't have time for a detailed explanation. All they could manage, their voices choked with fear, were 3 words: "We're being stalked." The employee's expression changed instantly. He understood. Without hesitation, he nodded and moved toward the front of the store, a guardian angel in a work uniform. Our narrator and her friend didn't wait, they slipped inside through the back door, entering the stockroom. The store was laid out with a deli counter on the left and the alcohol section on the right. It was a split-second decision. Her friend ducked into the deli station, and our narrator hid among the tall shelves of liquor on the right. Crouched on the cold linoleum floor, surrounded by boxes and bottles, our narrator's world shrank to the few square feet of her hiding place. Her heart was a frantic drum against her ribs. She could hear the normal sounds of the store, the hum of freezers, the distant chatter of a radio. Then, the sound they dreaded, the front door chiming open. She risked a peek around the corner of the shelf. It was one of the men from the car. He was inside, looking around. She ducked back, praying he wouldn't venture into the back area. The minutes stretched into eternities. Finally, the back door opened. It was the employee. His face was stern, but his voice was calm. "They're gone," he said. The relief was so profound it was almost dizzying. He explained that he had confronted the group of men. And here, the story takes an even more chilling turn. When he pretended to be their older brother, the men didn't deny their actions. They didn't make excuses. They flat out admitted to stalking the 2 young women. Their justification? They were just getting beer. The banality of the excuse was as terrifying as the chase itself. It revealed a complete lack of remorse, a sense of entitlement to their predatory behavior. The female employee from the deli counter added another piece to the puzzle. These men were regulars. And they had a habit of hanging around, making creepy, sexist comments in Spanish, arrogantly assuming no one else could understand them. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was a pattern of behavior. Our narrator and her friend stayed in the store for a while longer, their bodies still trembling with residual adrenaline, their minds struggling to process the narrowness of their escape. They were overwhelmed with gratitude for the 2 employees whose quick thinking and compassion had provided a sanctuary in their moment of utter terror. The ride home was silent, the adrenaline replaced by a deep, bone-chilling exhaustion. The narrator had escaped physically unharmed, but something had been stolen from her that night, her sense of security. The world had revealed a darker, more predatory underbelly, and once you've seen it, you can never fully unsee it. This story exemplifies the psychology of the hunt, the selection of targets, the testing of boundaries, the pack mentality, and the sheer, terrifying persistence of a predator. It also shows the profound importance of trusting your intuition, even when you can't articulate why you feel afraid. Her friend's gut feeling, though initially brushed aside, was the first and most important line of defense. But the violation of safety can take many forms. It isn't always a high-speed chase. Sometimes, the terror is slower, more intimate, and unfolds in the space of a single aisle, under the glare of fluorescent lights, with other shoppers just feet away. Our next story is a masterclass in this kind of slow burn, psychological horror. Story 2, The Formula Run. Our second story shifts the perspective. Our narrator here is a young mother. Her world revolves not around the freedoms of late adolescence, but around the responsibilities of caring for her infant daughter. It was late, around 11:30 p.m. The house was quiet, her husband was home, and her baby was sleeping. It was in this calm moment that she realized a critical fact: her daughter was out of formula. She needed to make bottles for the next day's daycare. The errand was non-negotiable. This narrator's illusion of safety was built on different foundations. It wasn't the thrill of independence, but the routine of motherhood. She was going to a familiar store, a Walmart, just a mile down the road. A quick in-and-out trip. She told her husband she'd be back in a few minutes. The night was ordinary. The task was mundane. There was no reason for fear. She drove the short distance, parked, and walked into the store. The late-night atmosphere was different. The crowds were thinner. The energy was lower. But it was still a public, well-lit space. She found the baby aisle, located the specific formula her daughter needed, and placed it in her hand. Mission accomplished. But then, as so often happens in these places, she was distracted. A rack of baby clothes, a cute little dress. She paused for a moment to look, her mind shifting from practical necessity to a mother's affection. It was in this vulnerable, distracted moment that the threat revealed itself. She saw a movement in her peripheral vision. A presence. And then she felt it, a physiological reaction before her conscious mind could even process it. The hairs on her arms stood up. Her body's alarm system had been triggered. She turned her head, and then, in a classic double take, she turned it again, her eyes locking onto the source of her discomfort. A man was standing there, not browsing, not moving. He was just staring directly at her. And the most chilling part? He didn't look away when she made eye contact. He didn't seem embarrassed or apologetic. He simply accepted her gaze and continued his own. This is a key psychological tactic of predators, the normalization of abnormal behavior. By refusing to acknowledge the social taboo of staring, they seize a small amount of power. They force the victim into a position of having to respond. Our narrator, flustered, attempted to normalize the situation herself, a common coping mechanism. She let out a nervous, fake laugh and made a comment about the clothes. "Oh, these are so cute, huh?" A plea for normalcy. His response was a smirk. No words. Just a silent, knowing expression that conveyed a world of unsettling intention. The threat assessment was immediate. He was a few inches taller than her, maybe 5'9". White, with long, unkempt hair. His clothes were shabby, he looked either homeless or severely down on his luck. And then, the detail that sends a shiver of revulsion down the spine, one of his hands was resting casually on the crotch of his pants. A gesture that was both possessive and threatening. The distance between them was about 6 feet. Close enough to feel like an invasion, far enough to claim deniability. Her palms began to sweat. The primal part of her brain was screaming danger. She muttered something about having a good night and began to walk away, fast. But in her panic, she made a tactical error. She turned deeper into the store, toward the back, instead of heading directly for the front exits. This is a crucial moment. Fear can cloud judgment, and the instinct to flee doesn't always choose the most logical path. It simply chooses a way. She tried to regain composure, deciding to grab a 12-pack of soda, an attempt to make her trip seem more purposeful, to blend in. But as she turned to head back to the front, she heard it, the shuffling of his footsteps behind her. He was matching her pace. She sped up, the shuffling sped up. This is the stalk, pure and simple. The auditory confirmation of pursuit. She reached the checkout lanes, choosing the 10 items or less line. He got in line directly behind her. He had no items. But then, he reached to the candy shelf, picked up a single bar, and placed it on the conveyor behind her formula and soda. This is another psychological move, creating a false pretext for his presence. I'm a customer, just like you. Now, the distance closed entirely. She could smell him, a pungent mix of body odor and stale beer. The sensory violation added to the growing terror. She instinctively turned away, edging closer to the woman in front of her. He moved closer, too. And then came the first physical contact. A brush against her left butt cheek. It was subtle. Could it have been an accident? The crowded checkout line. She turned sharply. Hey! He mumbled an apology. It was vague, meaningless. Our narrator makes a poignant point here. She was wearing jeans and a baggy t-shirt. She looked like crap. This is an important observation. Predatory behavior is not about attraction, it's about power and opportunity. It shatters the harmful myth that victims are asking for it based on what they wear. This was about control. She turned her back to the counter again, trying to finish the transaction. The cashier began scanning her items. And then it happened again. This time, it wasn't a brush. It was a hard, deliberate pinch on her other butt cheek. The line had been crossed. The subtlety was gone. In that moment, the fear was eclipsed by something else, raw, indignant anger. She turned around, and this time, her voice was loud and clear, cutting through the humdrum of the store. Hey! Stop touching my ass. The scene was set for a confrontation. But the true terror was only just beginning. Because the confrontation inside the store was merely the prelude. The real danger was waiting for her in the vast, dark emptiness of the parking lot. The confrontation at the checkout was a blur. The cashier, frozen for a moment, asked if there was a problem. Our narrator, her voice trembling but firm, stated the facts. Yes, this guy just pinched my butt and I don't know him. He's creeping me out. The man was asked to step away. He did, but his glare was pure venom. He was angry, not ashamed, not apologetic, but angry at being challenged. This is a hallmark of the entitled predator. She paid for her items, her hands shaking so badly she could barely handle her debit card. The cashier bagged her things. The moment the transaction was complete, she didn't walk, she bolted. The automatic doors slid open and she took maybe 10 steps into the parking lot when she heard the doors swish open behind her. She didn't need to look back. She knew. Her body knew. She heard his footsteps, heavy and fast, marching directly toward her. What followed was a pure, unadulterated flight response. Her car was 2 lanes away. It might as well have been 2 miles. She fumbled for her keys, her fingers like numb sausages, finally unlocking the doors with a frantic click. She could hear him behind her, grunting and panting, his footsteps closing the distance. The adrenaline hit her system like a tidal wave, granting her a supernatural burst of speed. Tears of pure terror welled in her eyes, blurring her vision. She swung the bag containing the 12-pack of soda, an improvised, pathetic weapon, as she ran. She reached the car, yanked the door open, and flung herself inside. She didn't even bother to close the door fully. The key was in the ignition, turned, and the engine roared to life. She threw the car into reverse without even checking her mirrors, her sole focus on escape. It was in that moment that he reached her car. As she slammed her foot on the accelerator, he slammed his body onto the hood of her vehicle, his face contorted with rage, yelling something she would never hear. The car lurched backward, and the momentum threw him off the hood, sending him sprawling onto the asphalt. She didn't stop. She shifted into drive and peeled out of the parking lot, driving the mile home at a speed that defied reason, her body shaking uncontrollably, her breath coming in ragged, hyperventilating gasps. The safety of her home, when she finally reached it, offered little comfort. She raced inside, locked the door, and was consumed by a deep, physiological chill. Her husband's reaction was a primal one of his own, rage. He wanted to find the man and exact vengeance. But our narrator didn't want vengeance, she wanted to barricade herself in, to shut the windows, to crawl into bed and make the world disappear. The psychological aftermath was just beginning. The question that haunts her, and haunts so many victims, is the one that has no easy answer: what makes people do these things? Don't they realize the sheer, soul-shattering terror they inflict? The result is a world made smaller. A mace and a taser become necessary accessories for a trip to buy baby formula. The illusion of safety, once shattered, is incredibly difficult to rebuild. These two stories share a common, terrifying thread: the escalation from a feeling of unease to a full-blown fight for survival. But what about the encounters that never reach that physical point? What about the threats that are stopped before they can fully unfold? Our third and final story is a powerful lesson in the life-saving potential of intuition and the courage of a stranger. It takes us away from the darkness of midnight and into the seemingly safe light of day, proving that danger is no respecter of time. Story 3, The Lanyard. Our final narrator is a 16-year-old girl. Her world is the structured universe of high school, where a broken lanyard for her mandatory ID badge is a genuine problem. She describes herself as independent, comfortable going shopping alone. She enjoyed the solitude, the freedom to browse makeup and school supplies at her own pace. Her illusion of safety was built on the foundation of normalcy and routine. This was a daytime errand on a Sunday. Her parents were at work, her brother at a game. The world felt orderly and safe. She arrived at the same Walmart we've now come to know as a place of shifting realities. She parked, went inside, and headed straight for the purpose of her trip, the lanyards in the school and office supplies section. The aisle was quiet. There was one other person there, a man, probably in his mid-50s, of average height and build, looking at wallets. He looked, in her words, like an old grandpa. He was utterly non-threatening. This is a critical detail. The most effective predators are those who wear the most convincing disguises. He initiated contact. "Hi there," he said, with a big grin. It was friendly. Harmless. Our narrator, raised to be polite, replied in kind. "Hi. How are you doing today?" A standard, social exchange. His response, however, contained the first, almost imperceptible crack in the facade. "I'm good," he said. "How are you?" "I'm great. I'm just doing some shopping today." Another big smile. Now, think about that statement. "I'm just doing some shopping today." It's redundant. Of course he's shopping, he's in a store, looking at wallets. This unnecessary elaboration is a subtle cue. It's an attempt to over-establish his harmless intentions, to fabricate a normality that doesn't need to be stated. It's the verbal equivalent of the candy bar our previous predator picked up at the checkout. It's a prop. Our narrator, still operating in the world of normal social rules, thought it was a little weird but dismissed it. She found her lanyard and moved on to her next destination, the body wash aisle. She was in no rush, so she took her time, smelling different scents. And then, she saw him again. He walked by the entrance to the aisle she was in. And he smiled. Again. This was the moment her intuition, her gut feeling, kicked into high gear. The first encounter could be a friendly coincidence. The second, in a different part of the massive store, strained the bounds of probability. A cold knot tightened in her stomach. She had been taught to trust this feeling, and she did something incredibly smart. She texted a friend. She documented her location and her suspicion. This is a crucial modern-day survival tactic, creating a digital witness. She tried to rationalize it once more. Maybe he needs soap too. So she continued to the face wash aisle. And for the third time, he appeared. This was beyond coincidence. This was a pattern. This was pursuit. He spoke again. "Excuse me, young lady. Can I tell you something?" His tone was still friendly, but the context had poisoned it. Sure," she replied, her voice now quivering. He delivered the line that so many young women have learned to dread, "You're very beautiful." The compliment, in this context, was not a compliment. It was a boundary test. It was a probe. She thanked him, her discomfort now palpable. Then came the next question, the one that revealed the true nature of his interest. "Are you married?" he asked. Let's pause here. She is 16 years old. She does not look like an adult. The question was inappropriate on its face. "No," she said, adding a nervous laugh, a defense mechanism to soften the awkwardness. His response was chilling. "Me either," he said. And then his grin changed. It was no longer the friendly grandpa smile. It was a grin that, as she so eloquently puts it, turned my heart to ice and made my stomach turn. The mask was slipping. The predator was emerging. He had established that she was young, alone, and unattached. The final question was the culmination of his assessment: "Do you have a boyfriend?" She was trapped. She was terrified. She lied, yeah," she stammered, hoping the claim of a male protector would deter him. It was her only available tool. He began to speak again, to push further. And in that moment, when the situation seemed poised to escalate into something inescapable, a miracle occurred. A young man, probably 17 or 18, who had been browsing the cologne aisle nearby, had been watching. He had seen her body language, heard the tone of her voice. He perceived her fear. And he chose to intervene. He walked over with a confident smile and said the words that would change the course of the entire encounter: "Yeah, she does. She's with me." In an instant, a stranger became a protector. The dynamic of power in the aisle shifted completely. The presence of another male, a potential equal, altered the calculus of the predator immediately. The older man became visibly uncomfortable. The confidence drained from his face. "Oh, I figured," he said, his tone now dismissive. "Well, good luck you too." And with that, he turned and walked away, his retreat as telling as his pursuit had been. The relief our narrator felt was immense. She turned to her rescuer and thanked him profusely. He explained that he could tell from the look on her face and the sound of her voice that something was very wrong, and he hoped she would play along. He didn't just leave it at that. He walked with her to the checkout, ensuring the man didn't follow her out of the store. He was a guardian angel in the most literal sense, a person who saw a wrong and chose to act, who used his presence not as a threat, but as a shield. Our narrator drove home cautiously, checking her mirrors, the fear still lingering in her system. She never saw either man again. But the encounter left a permanent mark. She will never know the old man's true intentions, and that is part of the horror. The "what if" is a ghost that never fully leaves. But she also carries with her the profound gratitude for the kindness of a stranger, a reminder that for every predator in the world, there are also protectors. Now that we have lived through these three harrowing accounts, let's pull back the curtain. Let's analyze the mechanics of fear and predation that were at play in each of these stories. Understanding the psychology is our best defense. It transforms a random, terrifying event into a predictable pattern, and predictable patterns can be recognized, and recognized patterns can be countered. 1. The illusion of safety and environmental trust. All three narrators began their journeys with an inherent trust in their environment. A Walmart is not a dark alley. It is a symbol of modern, safe, public life. We let our guards down in these spaces. Predators rely on this. They operate in the daylight of normalcy because that is where their camouflage is most effective. The first step to safety is to acknowledge that no environment is 100% safe. Situational awareness is not paranoia, it is a rational assessment of your surroundings. 2. The primal alarm system, intuition, the gut feeling. In every story, the first signal of danger was not a visible threat, but a feeling. A friend acting weird. The hairs standing up on your arm. A cold knot in your stomach. This is your intuition, a powerful, ancient data processing system that operates below the level of conscious thought. It picks up on micro-expressions, body language, and subtle environmental cues that your conscious mind misses. The single most important lesson from these stories is, trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Do not rationalize it away. Do not dismiss it as being rude. Your intuition's primary job is to keep you alive. 3. The predator's playbook, testing and escalation. Predatory behavior is rarely a sudden, violent attack. It is a process. It begins with selection, choosing a target who appears vulnerable, distracted, or isolated. This is followed by testing. A stare, a friendly question, a casual proximity. The predator is gauging your reaction. Are you aware? Will you enforce boundaries? If you fail the test, by ignoring the behavior, by being overly polite, the predator is emboldened, and the escalation begins. This can be a verbal escalation, the personal questions in Story 3, or a physical one, the touching in Story 2. The high-speed chase in Story 1 was an escalation that occurred when the initial, more subtle stalking was detected and the prey attempted to flee. 4. The bystander effect and the power of intervention. Story 3 is a perfect example of how to break the cycle. The bystander effect is a social psychological phenomenon where individuals are less likely to offer help to a victim when other people are present. The responsibility to act becomes diffused. The young man in the cologne aisle overcame this. He saw a person in distress and he intervened. His intervention was brilliant, it was non-confrontational yet decisive. He didn't accuse the older man, he simply changed the social dynamic by inserting himself as a protector. This is a model for all of us. If you see someone who looks uncomfortable, you can intervene. You can ask, "Are you okay?" You can pretend to know them. "Hey, there you are. I've been looking for you." You can create a distraction. A simple act of awareness can dismantle a predator's plan. 5. The aftermath, the theft of security, the physical danger in these stories eventually passed. But the psychological impact is long-lasting. The narrators speak of carrying mace, of being afraid to go out alone, of feeling their world shrink. This is a form of trauma. The fundamental belief that the world is a safe place has been violated. Recovery involves acknowledging this trauma, talking about it, and slowly, deliberately, reclaiming a sense of agency and control. It also involves a painful but necessary acceptance. The world contains individuals who derive pleasure or power from the fear of others. Knowing this is not about living in fear, it's about living with awareness. Let's return one last time to the aisles of that superstore. Let's feel the atmosphere, not as a list of events, but as a sensory experience. Imagine the hum of the fluorescent lights. It's a sound so constant you forget it's there, until the silence of fear makes it roar in your ears. See the endless rows of products, a colorful landscape of consumerism that can, in an instant, become a labyrinth with no exit. Feel the chill of the air conditioning, a comfortable coolness that can suddenly feel like the cold breath of a crypt. Smell the mix of popcorn from the entrance, cleaning supplies from the aisles, and the faint, sterile scent of linoleum. Now, overlay that with the heartbeat in your ears, thumping a frantic rhythm against your eardrums. The dryness in your mouth. The way your vision can tunnel, focusing on the threat while the periphery blurs into insignificance. Hear the specific sounds, the squeak of a sneaker on the floor that seems to match your pace. The rustle of a plastic bag that is your only weapon. The click-clack of a shopping cart that isn't yours. The deafening silence in a car when you're too afraid to speak. This is the immersive reality of fear. It's not an abstract concept, it's a physiological and psychological state that hijacks your entire being. These stories are powerful because they transport us into that state. They remind us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the action taken in spite of it. The courage to speak up, as the second narrator did. The courage to run, as the first group of friends did. The courage to intervene, as the young man in the third story did. So, what is the unbreakable truth that binds these three stories together? It is not that the world is a terrifying place filled with monsters, though it can be. The unbreakable truth is far more personal, far more powerful. The unbreakable truth is the profound power of your own intuition. It is that little voice, that gut feeling, that cold prickle on the back of your neck. It is your internal guardian, an ancient wisdom passed down through generations of ancestors who survived because they learned to heed its warning. The unbreakable truth is that your safety is more important than being polite. It is more important than avoiding a scene. It is more important than someone else's comfort. If you feel threatened, you have the absolute right to be loud, to be rude, to run, to draw attention, to defend yourself. The unbreakable truth is that there is strength in awareness. Pay attention to your surroundings. Look up from your phone. Make eye contact with people. Project confidence, even if you have to fake it. Predators are opportunists, they are more likely to target someone who appears unaware and vulnerable. And finally, the unbreakable truth is that we are all potential guardians for one another. If you see someone who looks like they are in trouble, trust your gut about that, too. A simple question, a distracting presence, can be enough to change the course of someone's life. In a world that can sometimes feel isolating and threatening, our greatest defense is often each other. These stories, shared from the shadows of the most ordinary of places, leave us with a chilling reminder that lingers long after the final word is spoken. The world is full of doors we walk through every day, believing we know what lies on the other side. But sometimes, the most familiar door can lead you into a room you never knew existed, and the truly unsettling part is realizing you were never alone in there to begin with. Thank you for listening to Unbreakable Truth. Stay aware, trust your instincts, and may your path always be well lit.